It was supposed to be the happiest weekend of our year. My younger brother Ryan had just married the woman of his dreams, and we were all gathered in Aspen, Colorado, surrounded by pine trees, fairy lights, and champagne-fueled laughter. But then, during the post-wedding brunch, my husband leaned in and whispered, "We need to leave. Now." He blinked. "What are you talking about?" I hissed under my breath. His voice was low, controlled. "She's not who she says she is. WW." And in that moment, everything around me cracked. The sound of clinking glasses, my father's laughter, Sienna's elegant laugh from across the tablet all faded into a low hum as my mind raced. My hands went cold. My heart dropped. Sienna Blakemy, new sister-in-law. The glowing bride in the silky white dress. The woman who gave me a pearl bracelet and called me family. What did he mean she's not who she says she is? I stared at him, waiting for a smile, a joke, something to tell me this was just Michael being paranoid again. But there was no trace of humor in his face, just urgency. Had I missed something? Had we all been fooled? I glanced across the garden. Sienna was chatting with our parents, her hand gently resting on Ryan's arm. She looked so natural, so poised, so perfect. But now that Michael had said it, I couldn't unsee the little things. The subtle shifts in her accent. The way she remembered just a bit too much about our family. The flicker of cold calculation that flashed just for a second behind her smile last night. Was this just nerves, or had we welcomed a stranger into our family? Before I continue, I need to ask, have you ever had that gut feeling that something just wasn't right, even when everything looked perfect? If you've been there, if your instincts ever whispered louder than logic, don't ignore them. And if stories like this make you hold your breath, hit that subscribe button now. Because trust me, this is just the beginning. 3 days before the wedding, Michael and I drove through the winding roads leading into Aspen. The sun was setting behind the mountains, casting golden light across the snow-dusted peaks. Everything looked like a postcard too perfect to be real. We were headed to the Highcrest Estate, a private mountain resort Ryan had rented for the wedding weekend. It was nestled just outside of town, perched on a ridge with a panoramic view of the valley. When we pulled through the gates, I actually gasped. The main lodge stood tall and elegant, its timber frame glowing under strings of lights, smoke curling lazily from the chimney. It looked like the kind of place you'd see on the cover of a luxury travel magazine. My parents were already there, chatting with Ryan on the stone steps. My dad was gesturing wildly, mid-story as usual. Mom looked radiant, her silver scarf catching the breeze like something out of a movie. Ryan spotted us and jogged over with that boyish grin I hadn't seen in months. "You made it!" he shouted, arms wide. We hugged, tight and warm, before he turned to Michael with a handshake that turned into a half-hug. "Your room's in the West Wing private balcony, heated floors, the works." Michael chuckled. "Trying to spoil us?" Ryan grinned. "Blame Sienna. Her taste is next level." He wasn't wrong. The estate was jaw-dropping. Our suite had floor-to-ceiling windows, a fireplace, and a view of the snow-capped trees that made you feel like you were living in a snow globe. As I unpacked, Michael flopped onto the bed and let out a low whistle. "This place must have cost a fortune." I nodded. Sienna's parents are footing most of the bill. Apparently, her dad owns half of Denver's real estate, or something close. I said it casually, but part of me felt uneasy saying it out loud. I'd only met Sienna once briefly over Christmas, and again at their engagement dinner. Both times, she was perfectly pleasant, kind, even, but there was something distant. Like she was always performing. I couldn't quite place it. And now, here we were, living in her dream wedding. That evening, the welcome dinner was held on the terrace under a canopy of twinkling lights. Long wooden tables lined with candles, pine cones, and garlands. Sienna appeared just as the sun dipped behind the ridge, wearing a soft cream-colored dress and a confident smile. She looked like she belonged on a bridal runway, graceful, composed, magnetic. She made her rounds effortlessly, remembering everyone's name, where they were from, what they did. When she reached us, her face lit up. "Lauren," she said, pulling me into a warm hug. "I've heard so much about you. Ryan says you are his first best friend." And it was the kind of thing that sounds sweet, but something about the way she said it, like she was checking off a line in a script. I brushed the thought aside. It was probably just nerves. Or maybe mine. She turned to Michael. "And you must be the legendary Dr. Carter. Ryan's told me all about the neurosurgeon brother-in-law who never brags about being a hero." Michael smiled politely. "I'm hardly a hero." "Well," she said with a twinkle in her eye, "humility suits you." I. As the night went on, I watched her move through the crowd like she'd known everyone for years. She made my mom laugh. She asked thoughtful questions about my dad's investment work. She even remembered my cousin's gluten allergy without being reminded. It was impressive. Almost too impressive. But I shook it off. I didn't want to be the cynical one. Ryan was in love, happier than I'd seen him in years. And Sienna? She seemed flawless. Polished. Effortless. Still, as Michael and I headed back to our suite that night, I found myself wondering, was this really a dream weekend? Or just a little too perfect to trust? The morning after the welcome dinner, I woke up to the soft sound of wind brushing against the windows. The air felt colder, crisper, almost like the atmosphere had subtly shifted overnight. Michael was still sleeping, his arm draped across the comforter, peaceful. But my mind was restless. We met everyone for breakfast on the East Terrace, where a spread of pastries and hot cocoa was already waiting. Sienna was there early, dressed in a deep green sweater and a long plaid coat, her hair effortlessly pulled into a low bun. She looked like something out of a holiday movie. "Good morning, you two," she called with a bright smile. "I asked the chef to make extra chocolate croissants today. Thought we'd all earned a little indulgence." Charming. Thoughtful. Again. Always just right. I smiled back and thanked her, trying to ignore the strange flutter in my chest. It was probably nothing. Just me overthinking. Until later that morning. I'd gone back inside to grab a scarf I'd left near the fireplace, and as I passed the study, I heard Sienna's voice through the half-open door. Her tone wasn't the sweet, melodic one we'd all grown used to. It was sharper, clipped, urgent. "No, listen, everything has to be in place by Sunday. I don't care what it takes. Just finish it." There was a pause. "He trusts you. That's all that matters." Then silence. I froze, one foot still in the hallway. It could have been anything. A wedding issue. A planner. A florist meltdown. I mean, people get intense before weddings, right? But when Sienna emerged seconds later, her expression transformed so quickly it almost startled me. Gone was the woman commanding someone with veiled threats. In her place was the glowing bride again. "Oh, Lauren," she said smoothly. "Just wrangling a linen delivery issue." You'd think table runners were classified military items with the way they're guarded. I nodded and smiled, but I could feel the muscles in my face tighten. As she walked away, I caught a glimpse of her phone deep blue case, thin gold trim. Later that day, during the wine tasting tour, I saw her using a completely different phone, a black one this time, with no case at all. I almost said something. But what would I say? "Hey, why do you have two phones?" "It's not that strange," I reasoned. "Some people use one for work, one personal." But still, it lingered in my mind like a splinter I couldn't quite dig out. That afternoon, during the dress fitting, I noticed more small things, but they added up. Sienna was giving suggestions that weren't really suggestions. Compliments that came with undertones. "Oh, Emily, I'm so glad we fixed your makeup style. That shimmer you wanted would have been a disaster under the lights. Claire, this new hairdo is so much more flattering than the one you originally picked. Thank goodness you let me tweak it." The bridesmaids smiled, polite, tight. Not uncomfortable exactly, but not at ease either. And when one of the stylists suggested adjusting Sienna's own updo just slightly, I saw it the flicker of annoyance. Quick, calculated, then gone, replaced by a saccharine smile. Let's stick with the original. It's exactly what I envisioned. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to be the difficult sister-in-law or the one reading into every little glance. But that flutter in my chest, it wasn't going away. I tried to shake it. Maybe I was just protective. Maybe this was normal pre-wedding stress. People always say it brings out strange sides of people. But that night, lying in bed with Michael's steady breath beside me, I kept replaying her voice behind that door. The edge, the urgency, the words. He trusts you. That's all that matters. Something about that didn't sit right, and try as I might, I couldn't unhear it. The next day, the schedule was packed. Bridal party photos, a cake tasting, last-minute decor meetings, and of course the final dress fittings. The whole thing was running like a well-oiled machine, and right at the center of it all was Sienna. She moved through the day with a calm confidence, clipboard in hand, calling out instructions and timelines with the polish of someone who had done this 10 times over. At first, I admired her. I mean, it's not easy managing a wedding this elaborate. Coordinating vendors, handling family personalities, keeping a smile on for every photo, it's a performance in itself. But the more I watched, the more I started to notice something beneath the surface. It wasn't just confidence, it was control. Sienna didn't ask for things. She delivered requests with a sugary smile, but there was an unmistakable edge underneath. Every compliment came with a correction. Every suggestion was actually an order, just dressed up pretty. At one point, she was reviewing the seating chart with the wedding planner, an older woman named Janet, who had clearly been in the business for decades. I overheard Janet gently suggest swapping 2 couples for better flow. Sienna's eyes narrowed just a fraction. "That's not what we agreed on, Janet," she said with a smile so tight it almost looked painful. "Let's stick with the plan. I don't like surprises." There was no shouting, no outburst. Just steel behind silk. Later, during the dress fitting, I was helping one of the bridesmaids zip up her gown when Sienna glided into the room like royalty. She scanned the room, eyes lingering just a second too long on everyone's reflection in the mirrors. Then she spoke. "Ladies, you all look stunning. Claire, I love that we went with the champagne tone for your dress. It's so much more forgiving. Emily, I'm glad we convinced you to try a center part. It balances your face so beautifully." Smiles, nods, polite laughter. But the air shifted. The way it does when you're not sure if you've just been complimented or critiqued. When it was her turn to step onto the fitting platform, the stylists fussed over her gown like she was a Hollywood starlet. Someone gently suggested altering the neckline by half an inch for comfort. Sienna's expression didn't change, but her tone did. "We're not changing anything. The neckline stays." Then, softer, almost like a lullaby. "It's exactly how I want it. Just perfect." Everyone nodded. No one pushed back. After the fittings, I found myself alone with Stephanie, one of the bridesmaids and Sienna's so-called cousin. I casually mentioned how impressive Sienna's MBA from Stanford sounded. Stephanie paused. "Stanford?" She blinked. "No, I thought she went to UCLA. Or maybe USC? Wait, I'm not sure." She laughed it off quickly. "Sorry, we have a lot of cousins. I mix things up." But the moment stuck with me. If they were that close, wouldn't she know where Sienna went to school? And, come to think of it, I hadn't heard a single other family member mention college stories or even childhood memories with her. Every time I tried to picture Sienna's life before Ryan, it felt blurry, like a photo with the background airbrushed out. And yet no one else seemed to notice. Everyone was so swept up in the elegance of it all. The perfection, the magic. I wanted to believe I was just being overly cautious, overly critical, maybe even a little jealous of how flawlessly she carried herself. But perfection, real perfection, doesn't usually need this much effort. And the more I watched, the more I realized Sienna wasn't just managing a wedding. She was managing people. The rehearsal dinner was held in the grand dining hall of the estate, exposed beams overhead, candles flickering down long wooden tables, and soft jazz playing beneath the hum of conversation. It was the kind of evening where everything felt warm and timeless. And yet, something felt off. I couldn't explain it. It was like I was watching a play, and every actor knew their lines a little too well. Sienna gave a toast midway through dinner, standing at the head of the table in a fitted navy dress, her glass raised high. Her voice was smooth, her words perfectly measured. When I met Ryan, I didn't just meet a man, I met a future, a family, a sense of home I didn't know I was missing. My mother dabbed her eyes with a napkin. My father beamed. Ryan reached for her hand. But I watched her eyes. They didn't soften the way Ryan's did. They scanned the room as she spoke, noting reactions, gauging impact. Her smile widened just enough at the exact right moment. Her voice cracked in all the right places. It was flawless. Too flawless. Later that evening, as people filtered out toward the fire pits and nightcaps, I noticed Michael standing by the bar, scrolling through his phone. But it wasn't the casual kind of scrolling. His brow was furrowed, his expression tense. "What are you doing?" I asked, keeping my tone light. "Just taking a few pictures," he said, slipping the phone into his pocket. "Of what?" He hesitated. "Just guests, group shots, you know." But I knew that face. It was the same one he wore when something wasn't adding up at the hospital, and he didn't have enough proof to say it out loud yet. He was working something out. That night, as we got ready for bed, he seemed distant. I didn't push. I was still trying to convince myself everything was fine, that I was overthinking, reading into things that weren't there. But the cracks were getting harder to ignore. At brunch the next morning, I overheard my father talking to Sienna about one of his investment strategies, something he rarely shared outside the firm. He was explaining a model he'd spent years refining. And Sienna? She was responding like she'd read it in a textbook. That makes perfect sense, especially when you account for secondary liquidity risks across diversifying markets. My father looked impressed, but I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Those exact words had come from a closed-door meeting I sat in on just weeks ago. That wasn't language someone picks up in casual conversation. How would she know that? Later, I brought it up to Michael. His jaw clenched slightly. "I noticed the same thing," he said quietly. "She knows too much. Not just general stuff, personal stuff. Specifics that aren't publicly available." I nodded slowly. "And she always seems to say exactly what people want to hear." He looked at me, serious now. "Have you noticed how none of her stories go deep? No childhood anecdotes, no real details. Everything she says sounds rehearsed." He was right. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that Sienna's life before Ryan was a blank slate. There were mentions of a job in tech consulting, a vague reference to grad school, a few well-curated social media photos. But nothing that truly grounded her in any kind of past. No old friends had shown up to the wedding. No teachers. No childhood neighbors. Just polished strangers in designer clothes who laughed too hard and drank just enough. Sienna's world before Ryan didn't seem to exist. Or if it did, it was hidden so well that none of us could see it. And for the first time since arriving in Aspen, I stopped trying to explain the strange feelings away. Because what if I wasn't overthinking? What if the version of her we knew was the one she wanted us to see? And the truth, the real truth, had already been erased? We were halfway through the final brunch when Michael's phone buzzed for the third time in 15 minutes. He glanced at the screen, and his entire posture changed. His jaw tensed, his hand tightened slightly around his coffee cup, and without saying a word, he stood up and stepped away from the table. I watched him pace outside the glass windows, phone pressed to his ear, his back turned to the rest of the wedding guests, still sipping mimosas and trading stories from the night before. Something was wrong, and I could feel it settling in my chest like a weight. When he came back, his face was pale, eyes sharp. He leaned in, speaking so quietly I almost didn't hear him over the clinking of silverware. "We need to leave, right now." It was the second time in 2 days he'd said those words to me. But this time, there was no hesitation in his voice. No warning, just urgency. I looked at him, trying to keep my voice steady. "Is it the hospital? An emergency?" He shook his head slightly. Then his eyes flicked barely noticeably toward the center table, where Sienna was sitting, laughing with my parents. Michael leaned in again. "It's about her, about Sienna." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" He held my gaze. Steady. Serious. "She's not who she says she is, Lauren. Not even close." My hands trembled beneath the table. "You have to trust me," he said. "But I can't explain here. Too many years, too many variables. We need to leave somewhere private." He stood, already playing the role of the apologetic doctor. "I'm so sorry, everyone, but I just got called in for an emergency consult back in Chicago. It's a neurosurgical case I've been overseeing. We have to head out sooner than expected." My mother frowned, disappointed. "Can't someone else handle it?" Michael gave her a gentle, practiced smile. "Not this one. I wouldn't leave if I didn't have to." We made our polite exits. Sienna hugged me tightly, eyes soft, voice warm. "I'm so sad we didn't get more time together. But don't worry, we'll make up for it in San Francisco. You're always welcome there." There was a flicker in her gaze, a shimmer of something just behind the smile, something I hadn't seen before. 20 minutes later, we were in the car, winding down the mountain roads. The trees rushed past, and the silence between us was deafening until I finally spoke. "Tell me everything." Michael pulled over at a lookout point and turned off the engine. He opened his phone, tapped into a hidden folder, and handed it to me. "This," he said, "is who she really is." My breath caught. The face on the screen was unmistakable. It was her, but with darker hair, a different name. Erika Markovich. An alias. A different city, a different life. Underneath was a list of known identities. Multiple marriages. Financial theft. A string of fraud investigations still open. "She's not just lying," Michael said quietly. "She's a professional. She finds wealthy families, embeds herself, and disappears with what she can take. Your brother wasn't the target, Lauren. Your dad was." I stared at the screen, at the photo, at the name, at the woman I'd shared a table with, shared champagne with, hugged. Everything in me wanted to scream. This can't be real." But somewhere deep down, in a place I hadn't wanted to admit existed, I already knew. If you've been watching this far, take a breath. Because this story is just getting darker. And if you haven't already hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. Sometimes, the people closest to us are the best liars. I sat in the passenger seat, staring at the mountains as they faded behind us in the rearview mirror. The winding roads of Aspen had never felt so suffocating. My hands were cold, my chest tight. Next to me, Michael was completely focused both on the road and on his thoughts. He hadn't said much since showing me the photos, the aliases, the evidence. He didn't need to. Everything was already unraveling in my head. Sienna, Erika, had embedded herself into our lives with such precision, such ease. She had woven herself into Ryan's heart, into my parents' trust, into our family's finances. And now we were on a timer. "What exactly do you think she's done already?" I asked, voice low. Michael kept his eyes on the road. "I don't know. But if she followed her usual pattern, she's been preparing for months. Setting traps, laying groundwork." My mind jumped to every conversation I'd overheard. Every smile that seemed too perfect. Every moment that had made my gut twist but I'd brushed it off. Michael continued. "She likely doesn't work alone. Her previous marriages? She used accomplices, people posing as family members, business partners, even legal advisors. The ones at the wedding?" He didn't have to finish the thought. I already knew. The aunt who barely spoke. The cousin who couldn't remember where Sienna went to college. The father who somehow knew the exact language to hook my dad into a business pitch. None of them were real. And worse, they might already have access to everything. We need to know if your dad's systems have been breached, Michael said. I pulled out my phone and called my friend Jenna. She worked in cybersecurity and owed me a big favor. Jen, I said as soon as she picked up. I need help. Serious help. I explained what we knew, at least, the parts I could say over the phone. That someone might have installed spyware on my dad's devices. That financial information could have been compromised. That we needed answers fast. I'll see what I can do, she said, her tone immediately shifting to professional. I'll need access. Passwords. Authorization. I hesitated. What if we told him it was for Michael? A medical investment he's researching. Just to get the login. There was a pause. Then, if he agrees, I'll take a look. But if this is what it sounds like, you need to act fast. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. We're on it. By the time we reached a small lodge in the next town, Jenna was already running scans. I called Dad and made up a story about Michael needing access to a sample portfolio model for a potential research fund. He bought it easily and gave us the access credentials. 2 hours later, Jenna called back. Her voice was sharp. Lauren, there's a keylogger installed on your dad's laptop, and it's been active since Thursday night. I felt the blood drain from my face. What kind of data? Everything. Passwords, account numbers, emails with clients, financial projections. Whoever did this has been harvesting sensitive information for days. The good news is I've shut it down. But they already have a lot. I thanked her and hung up, heart pounding. Michael didn't hesitate. We're going back. Tonight. What if she's already made her move? I asked. She hasn't yet, he said. If she had, she'd be gone by now. But we're close. Too close. And that means she might push faster. I looked out the window, the snow beginning to fall, the sky darkening over the ridges. We weren't just running away anymore. We were racing to stop a heist in real time. And the countdown had already begun. The lodge room we'd checked into was small, just a queen bed, a desk, and a single window overlooking the snowy main street. But for now, it felt like a command center. Michael sat at the desk, his laptop open, scanning files from the contact in private security who had helped him run the initial background check. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in my coat, arms wrapped tightly around myself like I was holding everything inside from falling apart. The screen glowed in the dim light. Each click opened another window, another layer, another life. There she was again, Erica Markovich. Then another name, Julia Lenz, a real estate advisor in Miami. And then another, Alina Petrov, supposedly a marketing executive in Vancouver. The photos varied different hair colors, subtle changes in style, but the face underneath was always hers. Always the same eyes. She's used at least 4 confirmed aliases in the last 5 years. Michael said, his voice flat, clinical. In each case, she embedded herself into families with significant wealth or business connections. The pattern is tight. She gets close, gains trust, integrates into their financial operations, and vanishes. I shook my head. How does someone even live like that? How do you become someone else over and over again? Michael didn't answer. He just opened the next file. This time, it wasn't a photo, it was a PDF scan of a marriage license. Erica Markovic to Calvin Rowe, CFO of a tech startup in Seattle. Dated 3 years ago. Divorced within 7 months. Outcome, N, to million missing. Never recovered. Next file, Julia Lenz to Gregory Stern, a financial advisor in Miami. Same story. Different city. Different amount. Different man. And the next. And the next. It was like staring into a hall of broken mirrors, each one reflecting a different version of the same nightmare. Then Michael opened a folder labeled Target Profiles. It took a few seconds to load. Maybe it was encrypted, maybe just heavy, but when it did, My breath caught. The first document was a profile sheet. Name, Thomas Gallagher. Occupation, founder and CEO, Gallagher Green Capital. Location, Chicago, Illinois. Assets, estimated Tresiantos MS+. Marital status, married. Children, 2. Weaknesses, reputation, family loyalty, legacy, focused. It was my father. The notes were detailed. Disturbingly so. Favorite restaurants, speaking schedule, quotes from past interviews, the name of his golf club, his longtime assistant, password habits. How did she get all this? I whispered. She's been watching him for months, Michael said. Maybe longer. Another file opened this time. It was a photo, grainy, taken from across a room. It was me, at a conference, laughing with my dad. Jenna had taken the picture. The folder had profiles on all of us. Ryan, my mom, even Michael. There were notes who we trusted, what we did, how close we were to Dad. She studied us, I murmured, feeling sick. Like case files. Michael nodded grimly. That's how these operations work. It's not one person, it's a network. She's just the face. Suddenly, everything felt hollow. The wedding, the compliments, the perfect hugs, all part of a strategy, a playbook. I stood up, pacing. We can't wait, I said. We have to tell Ryan. Tonight. Michael paused. We need to be smart. If she senses what we know, she could disappear. Take what she's already gathered and run. I clenched my jaw. Then what do we do? He looked at me. Steady. Calm. We gather more. Concrete proof. Then we corner her with everything at once, no room to deny, no room to flee. I wanted to scream, to cry, to do something. But I knew he was right, because this wasn't just about stopping a wedding anymore. This was about stopping a professional thief before she vanished again, this time, with a piece of my family's life. And we were running out of time. The sky over Aspen had turned a deep indigo by the time we pulled back into the estate. Snowflakes drifted softly under the porch lights as we parked in the far corner of the lot. My heart felt like it was echoing inside my chest. Every breath I took was shallow. Inside, the wedding dinner was just wrapping up. Glasses clinked, laughter drifted down the hallway, and somewhere, someone was playing the piano. No one had any idea what was about to unfold. I texted Ryan. Can we talk? Alone. Urgent. It's about Sienna. He replied almost immediately. Library. 10 minutes. When we stepped into the room, Ryan was already there, standing by the fireplace, arms crossed, confusion furrowed into his brow. What's going on? He asked. Why did you just vanish this morning? And what's with the mystery text? I didn't waste time. I took a breath, then said it straight. Ryan, the woman you married, she isn't who she says she is. He blinked. What? Michael opened his laptop and placed it on the table. She's not Sienna Blake. That's just the name she's using this time. The first image loaded Erica Markovic, the alias from Boston. Then another, and another. Each one sharper, colder than the last. Ryan laughed, a dry, nervous sound. No, that's insane. That's not. Just look, I said gently. Please. We let the files speak for themselves. The marriages, the missing funds, the FBI watch list, the surveillance photos, the target profile on our dad. As each new detail unfolded, I watched the color drain from Ryan's face. This isn't possible, he whispered. We've been together for almost a year. I know her. His voice cracked. Michael stayed calm. You know what she wanted you to know. That's what she's best at. She builds trust, then uses it. The door creaked open. Sienna stepped in, dressed casually in a beige sweater and dark jeans. Her hair was pulled back. She looked calm, almost confused. What's going on? She asked, glancing at the three of us. "Why are you all in here?" No one spoke for a second. Then Ryan turned toward her. "Who are you?" he asked softly. "What's your real name?" Her expression flickered. Just for a moment. A crack in the mask. Then it was back, the soft concern, the wide eyes. "Ryan, what are you talking about?" Michael stepped forward, laptop open. "We have proof. We know everything. The names, the marriages, the thefts, the spyware on Mr. Gallagher's laptop." Her eyes narrowed just slightly, lips tightening. She scanned the room, noting every exit. "Don't," I warned. "Security's been alerted." That was a lie. But it worked. Her body stilled. "You've been conning our family from day one," Michael said. "Ryan wasn't the prize. Our father was." She let out a slow breath, her tone changeless, breathy, more clipped, colder. "Well," she said, a trace of an accent slipping through, "you're not as stupid as you look." Ryan flinched like he'd been struck. "I cared about you," he said, his voice trembling. "Was any of it real?" She tilted her head, thinking. "I didn't hate being with you. But love? Please, you were the key. Not the vault." Silence fell. No one moved. No one breathed. I had never seen my brother look so broken. The silence in the library was heavy, like the air itself had thickened. Ryan stood there, barely breathing, eyes locked on the woman he had promised forever to, or thought he had. Sienna, Erica, or whoever she truly was stood completely still, her expression unreadable. The warmth in her eyes had vanished. The gentle bride act. Gone. What remained was something colder. Sharper. Calculated. "I should have known it would be the doctor," she said finally, her gaze flicking to Michael. "You have that annoying habit of thinking 2 steps ahead." Michael didn't flinch. "We tried giving you a chance to walk away quietly. You made it clear that wasn't your plan." She smirked. "Oh, come on. I've done nothing illegal." Yet, my father stepped into the room just then, holding a manila folder and a phone. "I beg to differ," he said, his voice like steel. Sienna's eyes narrowed. "We've documented everything," he continued. "The keylogger, the fake identity, the false marriage license, the pattern of fraud. We've handed it all to the FBI. Publicity nightmare," she replied coolly. "You sure you want that? Thomas Gallagher, duped by a con artist in front of his entire network?" I could see either trying to read him, to find the soft spot to twist. But Dad didn't blink. "I'd rather risk embarrassment than let you walk away with what belongs to my family." Her tone shifted again, sharper, more mocking. "You think they'll prosecute me for having a husband who loved me? For talking business with a man who opened the door himself?" She gestured toward Ryan and Dad. Michael replied before anyone else could. "They'll prosecute you for using forged documents to access a federal banking system. For installing surveillance software on a device that handles multi-million-dollar accounts. For identity fraud across 3 states." The smirk faded just slightly. "You're bluffing." "No," Dad said, pulling up an email on his phone. "I've already frozen all my accounts, and the FBI has acknowledged receipt of everything. They'll be here within the hour." Now she froze. That was the first real crack. For a second, I thought she might run bolt for the door, grab a bag, disappear into the night the way she always had before. But Michael stepped slightly in front of it, just enough to make her think twice. She exhaled slowly. Her gaze turned to Ryan. "I could have made you happy," she said. Not soft, not pleading, just matter of fact. Ryan shook his head. "You made me feel small, like love had to be earned by proving myself." He looked down for a moment, then back up. "None of it was real. You never existed. Just the version you needed me to see." The quiet in the room deepened. I don't know what she was expecting, a final chance, a twist, someone to take her side. But no one spoke, no one moved. Finally, she lifted her chin. "Well," she said, "I suppose this one's over." "You won't be disappearing again," Michael said quietly. She didn't respond. 10 minutes later, when the FBI arrived, she didn't resist. She walked between the agents like someone who had done it before. Calm, controlled, even elegant. But this time, she wasn't leaving on her terms. She wasn't slipping out through the cracks. This time, we got there first. The days after Erica's arrest felt unreal. The house emptied out fast. Guests were told that the newlyweds had parted ways due to unforeseen circumstances, and most people left without asking too many questions. They assumed drama. Maybe family conflict. Maybe something more salacious. But none of them knew the truth. Only the four of us did, me, Michael, Ryan, and my father. We stayed behind an extra day to handle statements with the FBI. They were professional, firm, and strangely gentle, like they'd done this before. Like they'd seen too many versions of our story to be surprised anymore. Erica Sienna, however, she really was booked under the name Erica Markovic, though the agent said she had at least 2 other passports, all currently being verified. Her team, they told us, was part of a loose but active ring of high-end con artists operating across the country. Some had been caught, some were still out there. But for now, the damage had been contained. Ryan didn't speak much during those first few days. He answered questions when asked, ate when we reminded him, but mostly, he just sat in silence. On the drive back to Chicago, he stared out the window the entire time. "I thought I was building something real," he finally said, voice hoarse. "And it turns out I was just a mark." My heart broke hearing that. Because it wasn't just betrayal, it was humiliation. It was grief for something that was never real. And somehow, that's harder than mourning something lost. When we got back, Ryan moved into our parents' house temporarily, just until he could sort things out. But the truth was, none of us wanted him to be alone. Not yet. My mom busied herself with casseroles, laundry, soft reassurances. My dad stayed quiet, except for the occasional apology that Ryan never asked for. And I checked in every day. Sometimes just to sit beside him and say nothing. Because sometimes silence is the only thing that feels safe. Michael, to his credit, never said, "I told you so." Not once. He just supported. Softly, quietly. Which was exactly what Ryan needed. Time passed. Not quickly, not easily, but it passed. 3 weeks later, Ryan started going for walks. Then to the gym. He updated his resume. Even mentioned maybe switching industries entirely, something that didn't put him in the path of power couples and business dinners and curated lies. 6 weeks later, he moved into a small apartment near the lake. No luxury high-rise. Just a quiet corner of the city with a decent coffee shop across the street and a bookstore 2 blocks away. And then, almost 3 months to the day, he texted me a photo of a cappuccino. No caption. Just a cup of coffee, sitting across from another one. I smiled. And I didn't ask questions. Because healing doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it's just a quiet cup shared in peace. What Erica took from him wasn't just trust, it was the idea of trust. But he was learning, slowly, carefully, that it's okay to trust again. Just not blindly. A year later, we sat around the dinner table again. No candles. No catered dishes. No champagne flutes or speeches. Just homemade lasagna, garlic bread, a little too crispy, and mismatched plates set on my parents' kitchen table. It was warm, imperfect, and real. Ryan was the last to arrive. He stepped through the door with a quiet smile and a bottle of red wine he'd picked up on his way over. His hair was longer. He looked older, in a good way, like someone who had lived through something heavy and come out the other side. Softer, but stronger. "Hey," he said, hugging Mom, giving Dad a nod, bumping knuckles with Michael. When he sat down next to me, he exhaled. Not a tired breath, but a peaceful one. We talked about small things. Work. The weather. My mom's new obsession with herbal teas. It wasn't exciting, but it felt safe. Familiar. Honest. After dessert, just some brownies and store-bought ice cream, there was a lull in the conversation. One of those rare moments when everyone's quiet, but the silence doesn't feel awkward. Then Ryan spoke. "You know," he said, his voice thoughtful, "for a while, I thought what happened to me meant I wasn't capable of trusting people anymore, or that I was too gullible, too easy to fool." No one said a word. We let him talk. "But I've realized something this past year," he continued. "Real love doesn't ask you to isolate yourself. It doesn't make you earn it through silence or obedience or sacrifice. It doesn't try to separate you from the people who know you best." He looked at me, then at our parents. "Real love fits into your life. It adds to it, doesn't rewrite it." I felt something shift in my chest. That quiet kind of emotion that sneaks up on you. The kind that doesn't break you, but rebuilds something inside you. My mom reached across the table and touched Ryan's hand. My dad gave the smallest nod, his eyes a little shinier than usual. Michael leaned closer and whispered in my ear, "He's back." And he was. Maybe not completely. Maybe there were still pieces mending behind the scenes. But Ryan was here. He was present. Whole in a way that only comes after you've been broken and rebuilt yourself carefully, with intention. Later, as we stood by the front door putting on coats, I asked him, "How did you know you were ready to trust again?" He paused, thought about it. "I didn't," he said. "I just stopped letting fear drive the car." And I smiled, because that was the bravest thing I'd heard in a long time. We didn't get justice in the way people imagine it. There wasn't a dramatic trial or headlines splashed across the news. But there was accountability. Erica was charged. Her network was exposed. And our family learned to protect itself, but not harden. That matters, too. Because in the end, the real victory wasn't just stopping a con. It was remembering what love is supposed to feel like. Safe, honest, and never, ever transactional. If you've ever doubted your own instincts, your worth, or your capacity to love after betrayal, I hope this story reminded you. Real love doesn't ask you to shrink. It helps you grow. And if that speaks to you, please subscribe, because the stories that heal us deserve to be heard.